Good afternoon. Good afternoon. If everyone could please take their seats, we're going to get started here in a couple of minutes. And I'll just, I think JP is going to make this announcement, but I'll just do it first as people are walking in. If you could please silence your phones because this event is being live streamed, that would be great. Thanks.
Should have brought my sunglasses. Good afternoon. Welcome to the USU Soccer hosted candidate forum. I'm Jesse Harrell, chairman of the board of USU Soccer, and I would like to begin by thanking Lynn Burring Manuel and United Soccer Coaches for being our partners this week and putting on such an extraordinary event. I'd also like to thank our CEO, Chris Moore, and his staff for working tirelessly for probably more than the last month, trying to put all this together, and hopefully it exceeds your expectations. I want to welcome the members of the USU Soccer Board and our 55 state associations, all of whom are here and present today. Finally, I would like to thank the 8 presidential contenders who are vying to become the next president of U.S. Soccer Federation. Our members want to hear their plans and their solutions for growing the sport, particularly as it relates to the youth systems. So without further delay, let's get started. At this time, allow me to introduce our moderator for the afternoon, Mr. J.P. Dellacamera. J.P. is regarded as one of the pioneering voices in American soccer. With Fox Sports, he calls matches for Major League Soccer, U.S. Women's National Team, CONCACAF Champions League, UEFA Europa League, and he served as a play-by-play announcer for Fox Sports coverage of 2015 FIFA World Cup, Women's World Cup, 2016 Copa America, and She Believes Cup in 2017. He's also called 12 FIFA World Cups. Please join me in welcoming to the stage J.P. Dellacamera.
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Jesse. We welcome those in attendance here at the Marriott in downtown Philadelphia, and to those watching and listening to our live stream presentation on our U.S. Youth Soccer Facebook page and also on U.S. Youth Soccer's YouTube channel. Before we get started, another reminder to please silence your cell phones, and also we've asked no flash photography as it could interfere with our live stream presentation. So we'll tell you what's going to be going on today in an outline form. With the candidates that are here today, 8 of them, U.S. Youth Soccer used a random draw to determine the order of the candidates for today's forum, and the candidates will be interviewed in the following order. First will be Hope Solo, second, Kyle Martino, third, Steve Gans, fourth will be Kathy Carter, fifth, Michael Winograd, sixth, Eric Winalda, seventh, Paul Caligiuri, and eighth, Carlos Cordero. Each candidate will have up to 90 seconds or thereabouts to make an opening statement before we do the questions. And while I am interviewing the one candidate here on stage, the other 7 candidates will be in the green room awaiting their turn to join me on stage. So now a few brief words about the questions that are going to be used in today's candidate forum. All of the questions posed today were chosen from hundreds of questions written and submitted by U.S. Youth Soccer member state associations. Personally, I played no role whatsoever in formulating the questions. I just had my first look at the questions about 5 minutes ago. If all goes according to plan, each of the candidates will answer 5 questions today in the 15 minutes that they'll have on stage with me. 3 of the questions were sent to them in advance. You should have their written responses somewhere in front of you. I will repeat those 3 questions to the candidates and possibly ask them a follow-up question. So again, each candidate will respond or have an opportunity, depending on the length of their answers, to the same 3 questions. To make things a little bit more interesting, we're going to ask the candidates to draw 1 to 2 additional bonus questions, if you will, from this bowl here. It depends on how much time we have remaining. These are random questions, and they don't know what the questions are, neither do I, so we'll see how quickly they are able to think on their feet. I will have a clock right here in front of me. The candidate will see that. It's 15 minutes. You're the only ones, and those listening or watching on our presentation that won't see the clock, so I'll do my best to let you know when we get to this bowl how much time each candidate has remaining. So the goal is to have each of them answer 3 questions at a minimum and up to 5. So with all that said, I think I've covered everything. I'd like to introduce candidate number 1. Please welcome Hope Solo.
Oh,
There you go.
thank you. I'll leave that there. Thanks, JP.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. First of all, I want to thank all of you for your time these past few weeks. The conversations I've had with the state associations have been incredible. They've left me inspired and hopeful, yet angry at how the Federation has failed you. As many of you know, I grew up in a small farming town in the state of Washington. I never played for the top club teams in the big cities like Seattle. My family simply couldn't afford it. I played on my local teams, and I worked my way up through a system that worked. A system that gave kids a clear path to obtaining college scholarships and a higher level of play. ODP, to state team, to regional teams, to national teams. I was that diamond in a rough that through the old system I was found. Today I would have been missed, and today there is another Hope Solo out there who has been already missed. What have we become? Our country was built on hope and opportunity. Yet through our failed system, we are turning our backs on the kids who can help us achieve the success that we all want. Throughout this process, there have been people who've said, I'm in this race as a publicity stunt, that I'm not here for the right reasons. To those people, I say, look in the mirror. What are you doing to ensure our best talent doesn't fall through the cracks? What are you doing to ensure every kid in America can afford to play the game? I am in this race because I cannot watch the sport I love exclude so many and fail so many. I have fought tirelessly for change as a player, and while change is slow and difficult, I have seen what can happen when we are united and when we demand better. I know the consensus in this room is that we need and we want change. I implore you not to fall for the false and empty political rhetoric, especially from candidates who have already been in positions to make change and did not. And I know this firsthand through our team's fight for equal pay. The United States Soccer Federation should have been the global leader in equal pay. Instead, that honor went to Norway, while we had to force it through a court system in a case that is still not resolved. The Federation, with Carlos Cordero as vice president, failed us. Kathy Carter, the highest-ranking woman in soccer, stayed silent. We demanded safe playing conditions on grass-only fields, yet both candidates had a role in approving games we played on turf that injured players. They had their chance to be change makers, and they failed. The true change makers are sitting right here in this room, and for too long, you have not had a voice. If we want and desire vast and necessary change, we must demand it with our votes. If we want the change we all speak about, at least 2 candidates should be eliminated from your ballots. There is too much at stake: the future of our sport, the future of our youth, and our future standing in the global game. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Hope. Let's get started. First question, it's really a two-parter. It's been the goal of U.S. Soccer and our member state associations to align more closely with the Federation. What are your plans to utilize states so that they become of great value to U.S. Soccer? And in what areas do you see increased involvement from U.S. youth soccer state associations and the Federation?
Well, I believe the goals of U.S. Soccer, the state associations, and all of the members should be one and the same. Right now, there's no collaboration. It's unacceptable. And this framework, this leadership, should come from the Federation. With no true partnership, we can't have open lines of communication to identify players. So with the Federation's role to develop framework, I have 3 ideas in how to do that. I want them to focus on a clear and inclusive pathway to ID players and to develop players. It's too convoluted, it's too confusing for parents and kids alike. I'm confused by it, and I've been in the game my entire life. The second thing I want to focus on is making coaching accessible and affordable for every coach who has a desire to develop our youth. It's too expensive. Many of the coaches are taking time off work to get their new license. We have a very few amount of high-level coaches here in America compared to smaller countries around the world. That alone is unacceptable. If we want to develop our youth, we have to invest in the coaching program. If we want to develop our youth, we have to make the coaching licenses affordable to everybody. We have to schedule them more around the states, around the country. We can't have 1 or 2 a year. And this will be important to develop our youth and to develop our coaches. The third thing I want to focus on is talent identification. So once again, making a clear and concise pipeline. We have to have all the kids in one system, one pool, and there has to be a clear pipeline in order to identify these kids. Right now, most of the recruits, most of the scouts are focused on the DA, and so many kids are getting lost in the system. So until we all come together and we have all of the kids in one umbrella, we're going to continue to miss many, many talented kids. So those are the 3 areas that I want to focus on.
Second question, the youth soccer landscape in the U.S., as you mentioned, is fractured. U.S. Youth Soccer, U.S. Club, ECNL, DA, AYSO, SAY, USASA, et cetera. So growing the game is essential to the future success. As the next president of U.S. Soccer, what would be your plan to address the youth system and create greater alignment between the federation and its members to grow the game from the grassroots level up to the highest levels of competitive play?
After many phone calls and many conversations with most of you, it's clear that we're not on the same page. It's clear that we have too much internal fighting. It's clear that we're competing and using the same resources, the same funds, but all of our goals are the same. We want to develop the youth. So why are we fighting amongst ourselves? We have to, from the federation, from the top down, from the leadership, we need to find a way to put everybody in the same room together and make them come up with a plan and a strategy that will work for every single member. It can't just be dictated from men in Chicago. We need people who know about the game, who know about how to develop the youth. We need to have you guys come up with the ideas, because that will allow you to create a system that you believe in. And if you don't believe in it, then we're going to continue to internally fight. Some of the ideas that I have, with the elite players, I think we have to go back to the old system. I think we have to go to the state associations. We have to have our state and regional and national state championships. We have to go back to the ODP system with the state and regional and national ODP. And this will allow the federation to rely more on the states. I believe in that system. I believe that we could have done more with that system by investing more money into it, by nurturing that system that already worked, instead of creating the developmental academies and creating all these other systems that are only competing with a system that already works. Something that we also need to focus on is not just the elite players. We have to focus on all of the other players who don't want to be professional players, the greater youth system. What are we doing for them? One of the main issues, I believe, is that we don't have age-appropriate coaching licenses. You can take a coach with maybe the F license, and they can coach kids at 8 years old all the way until they're 18 years old. I want to see age-appropriate coaching licenses, and then, for instance, let's say ages 5 to 8, they can focus on basic skills. Ages 9 to 12, they can focus on foot skills. Ages 13 and 14, they can focus on distribution and attacking and defending. And then 15 to 18, they can actually focus on performance. This takes us back to developing the youth. It's not just about winning until ages 15 and up. Then we can focus on performance. But at the younger age groups, we need to focus on their skills. And in having an age-appropriate coaching program, then we're not continuing to pad our resumes as coaches, because it's not about wins and losses. It's about actually developing the children. So that's one thing I want to focus on. The other thing I already touched on is making coaching affordable to all, but also making the ability for kids to play affordable for all. We have to address that issue. I know we're not going to eliminate pay-to-play entirely, but we have to make playing soccer affordable for all families. The third thing I want to focus on is I want to eliminate the ruthless recruiting in youth soccer. I want to eliminate it. I want to create mandates, and if you don't follow the mandates, then I don't want you to be a USSF member. We cannot ruthlessly recruit these kids and create what I call super clubs in each state. You have all of the kids going to 2 clubs in each state. We have to invest in our local teams and clubs. We can't have kids traveling 2 hours. to play at the top club teams in the state. We need to rely on our coaches to develop these young kids in our local areas. So I want to eliminate ruthless recruiting, and I want to focus on the development.
Third question, Hope, what is your overall opinion as to the effectiveness of the developmental academy? What alternatives, changes, or additions would you propose, and what is your vision of that player pathway in the U.S.?
I think ideally, the DA conceptually is a great idea. You know, you have all the best players competing against one another. You focus on their skill sets. They have better coaches. But through this system, we're focusing too much time and resources and scouts only at the DA. And you know, as I touched on earlier, we're leaving so many kids out. Kids develop later. They don't all develop at the same time. They can't all afford to play in the DAs, and not every state has a DA. So we cannot rely on the system, and that's why I believe in the old system. I believe in the old system of having district ODP tryouts, moving up to state ODP teams, and regional teams, and national teams. And we need to take that system, and we have to put more funds into it and nourish it to make sure the kids can even afford to play ODP. We also need to have the clubs go into state tournaments and then go on to play regional tournaments, go on to play national tournaments. That's the old system, and it once worked. We found many players through this system. I hope that we can empower the state associations by putting all of these members under one umbrella. I would encourage that. I want to see that, and I know we can't force it, we cannot dictate, and for too long, the top people at US Soccer have dictated to you guys how we should better our own states, but they haven't visited those states. They don't know the problems in each individual state. So how are we going to better soccer here in America when you have people in Chicago never come to states like Wisconsin, Alaska, Nevada? They don't know the issues and the individual problems, yet they're telling you guys how to run soccer in your state. That's not going to work, and it's not going to bring us together as a soccer community.
If you're ready, we'll ask you to pick a bonus question out of the bowl. We're just under 4 minutes, and I'll read it as quickly as I can for you. I don't know, I think I'm supposed to read it, but I could have had you read it, I guess. Please provide your vision for the role of the highest elected official in U.S. soccer. What should the role of U.S. Soccer's board of directors be? What should the role of the federation staff be? And you have about 3.5 minutes.
Where to start?
Instead of a half hour or an hour or a couple days.
I believe the leadership, the top leadership at US Soccer needs to create the vision for all of soccer here in America. The mission statement right now for US Soccer is to make soccer be the preeminent sport here in the United States. I think it's short-sighted. I think it's a very narrow view. I think because of our diversity, the size of our country, how many youth kids are playing the game, how great and successful the women's team has been, we should be the global leader in every single category. Making soccer the preeminent sport here in the United States, that's a great idea, but it is very, very narrow-minded. We could be so much greater than that. We can be a global leader, and I think the top person at US Soccer needs to create that vision. And then we hire the right people. We hire a team of executives to implement this vision and this plan. The board of directors, I think we need to figure out how they become board of directors. I think we have to be more transparent. You know, right now, the candidates have access to maybe 600 of the voting delegates. Come February 10th, there's going to be 1,000, probably not sure the number because we can't have transparency, but it'll probably be more like 1,185 delegates that are voting, and all of us candidates have about 600 of the voting members. So through the board of directors, I mean, everybody is responsible for making the federation more transparent. I know it's a word we hear all the time, but it's not transparent. We don't know where the money is going. We don't know what Soccer United marketing and the relationship with US Soccer. We know the relationship, but we don't know the contracts. The board of directors need to push these issues as well. You can see that time and time again, we're not addressing these issues, and it's time to hold these board of directors accountable and the CEO as well as the president accountable as well.
You get to pick another question. Minute 25 is on the clock. I got to It's hard to read these quickly. What strategies would you employ to manage the competition within youth soccer that would allow state associations to allocate more time and resources towards growing membership and participation as a whole?
Can I look at that real quick?
Yeah, sure.
What strategy would you employ to
I was
manage
trying to figure it out
competition
myself.
within youth soccer that will allow state associations to allocate more? Well, one of the first things I want to do is U.S. Soccer, everybody knows, we have a surplus amount of funds that can be used for state associations, that can be used for the development of youth soccer. I believe that each state association should get allocated a certain amount of funds from the federation to be used as they see fit, because each state, like I said earlier, has individual challenges and individual problems that they have to face. And I think it's the responsibility of the federation to help those individual states. If we strengthen the states, then we're going to strengthen our federation. So USSF has to get involved in helping our individual states. Not sure that answers the question, but.
I think you did. Not enough time to ask you another one. It's like 13 seconds. Thank you so much, and good luck.
Thank you very much.
Hope solo.
Conclusion, or do we do our conclusion?
I'm sorry?
Do we do the 90-second conclusion?
No.
No.
I don't think so. No.
Are you sure?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Is there a...
I did have a conclusion for you guys, but I just want to say thank you for your time, and I look forward to speaking, having many more conversations with many of you that I haven't spoken to already. So you have my email, you have my phone number. Any questions, concerns, or ideas, please reach out to me. Thank you. Oh. Okay.
Yes?
I've been told to read my closing. You got it. So again, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my convictions, and for many of you believing I can be your voice at the highest level. I'm in this race because fighting from the outside can only achieve so much when the current power structure doesn't allow it. The only way to achieve true reform is from within. I promise you and the other diamonds in the rough that I will fight for you and for this game with the same commitment, tenacity, and willingness to go against the grain that made me the best goalkeeper in the world. I will not put profit before progress. I will no longer make decisions that affect you without you. I will not let the next Hope Solo or Christian Pulisic slip through the cracks. I will ensure your sons and your daughters that they have equal opportunity to play this beautiful game and make a living playing the sport that they love. I will not let the U.S. Federation be anything less than the best federation in the world, with the best team of leaders that the Federation has ever had. And between now and Election Day, I will continue to earn your vote and listen to what you have to say. The game needs a leader who is completely unencumbered by business interest other than the betterment of the game, driven by the development of our youth and the years of valuable experience and ideas that you bring. Not by the agenda of Soccer United Marketing and the MLS. If you want that change, I ask you to be that change. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks, JP.
So sorry I didn't know about that.
Oh, no problem.
You have to go.
Oh, this way?
Yeah. Thank you, Hope. Let's bring on our second candidate, introducing Kyle Martino.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a seat.
Let me shake your hand real quick.
You have a chance for an opening statement?
I'm going to deliver that before I
Without
get to
the
enjoy a
podium?
conversation
Okay.
with you.
Okay.
What I'm looking forward to. We haven't sat next to each other in a long time. And I want to start by thanking U.S. Youth Soccer, Chris Moore, for putting this forum on, getting us all together in this room. I want to thank you most importantly, because you are our soccer culture. You are the educators, the facilitators, the ones that grow this game. And locally, that's why I'm here, that's why a lot of us are here, and that's why this is a fantastic reunion to see all the faces that we've passed along the way. And it's just a really exciting moment to be in front of you again. I just want to take a brief second to thank someone right here. who I consider the voice of soccer in America. And I love thanking my coaches for making me the player I became. I do have to thank JP for being the first one I stood there as my voice was shaking and called a professional game with. And I know that's not entirely applicable to this group, but JP, I hope we can give him just a little bit of applause for the job he's done in growing this game and selling it on TV. Thank you. There are many important issues in this election, but when I think about it and I distill it down to one important issue, the most important issue. The game grows at the local level. The game grows at the youth. And I've been on the phone and flying around this country, and you've told me that poor leadership, shifting policies, investment disparity has fractured the youth market, and this is the thing we have to get right. It is essential to the health and the success of this game. And I really want to make sure that we understand that, and we focus on that, and we lead towards discussions to understand how we work together and how we collaborate on this, because what it's done is it's just created incredible market confusion, and it's market confusion that makes it difficult for parents, for coaches, for refs, for administrators, but most importantly, this market confusion is raising cost and chasing players out. You only have to look at the numbers to know that that's true. I mean, the declining participation should scare all of us. But if we don't believe the numbers, let's believe one of our biggest names. And an idol of mine growing up was Mia Hamm. And I wanted to be either Diego Maradona or Mia Hamm, and I became neither. But Mia said this to me, and it blew me away. She said, Kyle, there's an epidemic going on where the kids aren't having fun anymore. And take it from a World Cup winner who understands it's not about missing World Cups. She's coaching in the youth level in California. She sees it. She's boots on the ground, as you guys are. She sees that's where she can be the most valuable to this game. And we all have to see that and take Mia's words and realize that at this point, it's not about top of the pyramid. It's not about missing World Cups. We have to forget about that right now. The course correction we need right now, and we have a remarkable opportunity to deliver it, is let the membership elect a president that speaks for them and understands who grows this game, who creates a soccer culture. We all do here. And so I'm not an expert there. I've asked for your help to lead me so that I can lead you, and I can be the one to say, this is where the game grows. Let's give it back to the local people who created me, who created Mia, who created all these players, but we're the 1% all the way up there. We can't build a system based on us because 99% of the kids just want to play. They just want to have fun. They want to enjoy this game. So we have to understand that. Right now, if we don't have a leader that focuses on that, and we have a leader that thinks this solution is solved in boardrooms with spreadsheets, and doesn't get that this solution that we're looking for is solved on the grass, at the grassroots, locally, where this game grows. And then if you want us to win a World Cup one day, well, ask the people that created Mia Hamm how we do it. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Martino, first question. It's been the goal of U.S. Soccer, U.S. Youth Soccer, and our member state associations to align more closely with the Federation. What are your plans to utilize states so they can become of greater value to U.S. Soccer? And in what areas do you see increased involvement between U.S. Youth Soccer state associations and the Federation?
Well, I've already started doing this. My wife thinks I'm insane, but I'm already acting as president. I've quit my job. And the first thing I did was fly all around the country and get on the phone and listen. And I thought that was obvious, but I couldn't believe the response I got from the membership when they had someone sitting in front of them that said, please educate me, to tell me what the membership needs, because we have a major disconnect here. So to get to a federation that's going to finally become a member services organization again, it starts by putting the federation underneath the pyramid. It starts by the touch points, the largest ones, the biggest part of the membership, knowing that the federation is there. And I think that there's a false narrative where the membership doesn't want a leader. They absolutely want a leader. They want guidance. They want the federation to integrate the system. My dad has an amazing saying, and you've met my father. He worked for IBM for 40 years. He said, Kyle, if you can't fix it, feature it. So yeah, we're a huge country, the size of Europe. We have a $150 million surplus, $120 million budget. That's great. That's not going to solve this whole problem from Chicago. The way we solve this problem of a market that's confused, that's driving up cost, that is harming education, that's harming enjoyment, the way we solve that is by plugging into the people at the associations who have already modernized in ways that the Federation hasn't. So I'll hire a technical director. Many people will think, good, that's the person that's going to pick the head coach of the national team. Well, for the men, they don't have a competitive game or a game that matters for a year. Is that a priority right now? No, it's not. A technical director will obviously focus on all the national teams and what needs to happen, but a technical director will be plugged into local technical directors and regional people that are meeting already. I mean, US Youth, AYSO, SAY, US Club, these meetings are happening quarterly, but it's not plugged into a federation that's willing to lead and take great ideas and best practices from 55 associations and turn it into execution, and we need that leader now.
The U.S., the youth soccer landscape in the U.S. is fractured. You mentioned all of the different groups. Growing the game is essential to our future success. As the next president of U.S. Soccer, what's your plan to address the youth system and create greater alignment between the Federation and its members to grow the game from the grassroots level to the highest levels of competitive play? Well,
first I'm going to bring the Montagues and the Capulets together. And I've already started doing this. And I think it's unfair to blame these organizations for a marketplace that was not defined, market requirements weren't created and weren't regulated. And I know that sounds like an ugly word, but I promise you membership are telling me that they want someone, if they set rules, to first include them in that decision-making process. When we pass down a PDI, and on the third slide it says, don't treat our 12-year-olds like World Cup winners, and we come up with a rule that splits up best friends, I think we're tone deaf. Ask the associations what they think before you make these decisions. How do you do that? The regional meetings are already happening, of course. We need a recreational technical director, the biggest part of the pie, right? The biggest group of the membership. 50% of the kids are gone by the age of 10. Do you think the academy is important to those kids? Half the states don't even have academies. And 80% of the academies are not affiliated with MLS, so they've actually become more expensive. So we can debate if these decisions are good or bad, but that discourse only happens after the decisions are made. So we have to, as a federation, we have to create a UN. I mean, 55 associations, the good part is we don't need earpieces, we all speak the same language. And when you hire staff that's accountable, now you know when it breaks down why. And so my progress plan that was passed out by my local club team, and thank you to them for coming down. I trained with them recently, and this is the payback I needed because they embarrassed me. And I said, you embarrassed me on the field, please come down and help me at the convention.
Third question, what is your overall opinion as to the effectiveness of the Development Academy? What alternatives, changes, or additions would you propose? What's your vision of the player pathway in the U.S.?
Yeah, so the acronyms that you used in the last question, if lowering cost and including, I mean, the only thing inclusive about that were the letters. I mean, it covered almost the entire alphabet. We don't need to redo this and break it all up and start over again. There are so many ways to develop players. Clint Dempsey came from Nacogdoches, Texas, and his story is a pretty high-profile one, and I called him recently so he could remind me, because he told me in camp one time. And his parents drove him a few hours to play for Dallas Texans and try out. He made the team, but they couldn't afford it. So what did he do? He went back home and played co-ed rec soccer as a teenager and became one of the best players we've ever produced. We can produce players locally. Now, a lot of associations have fantastic ideas about jump-starting ODP again. That's where I came from. That's how we did it back then, and that wasn't perfect, but a return to a single system. And Hope mentioned a couple things that were great, and thank you, Hope, for pointing out a couple things that needed to be pointed out, and obviously for what she's done on the field, because it's obviously challenges for men and women are different. So the DA now has just come in, where now ECNL and DA, it's hard for parents, coaches, and players to understand what is this? Is it right? And we can't prey on a parent they're the ones making these decisions. I'm a parent now, and I freak out if my son doesn't finish his bottle. I mean, if at 7 and 8 years old, I'm worried that I'm making a decision that's going to affect their ability to get to college or become the player they're going to become, that's not what we're supposed to do. So the DA's got to stop climbing down into the area of the pyramid that it's not supposed to be in. And I had Thierry Henry come over here, not for the star quality, although it helped. It was to have a star say, this is not how we do it. If you're trying to be us and be Europe, we don't do it like this over there. We don't professionalize the game at that level. We localize it, and we make it affordable. We make it inclusive. So my Smile campaign that's in the progress plan that you have, my Over-Under campaign, we need to take 25% of our budget. Before we even start talking about areas we're not spending well, $3 million for a coach in 1 year, $3 million over 10 years for financial aid, we need to spend locally, grow the game, the membership, the experience, and then DA will absolutely capture kids as they're coming up. But it is, and a former women's national team player said this, so I'm going to, again, my progress plan is not me, I'm a conduit, and some of these things are other people's words, and I'm going to use them. She said, Kyle, it's not a pathway, it's Frogger. And no one knows how to get across the street, and it's dangerous, and it's stressful, and it's having people leave the game. And in another country, you can get away with that because it's the best option in town. Well, we have the best sport in town, but kids are getting chased away from this game. And then we don't have administrators, we don't have refs, we don't have coaches, we don't have fans for life. So DA, good idea, execution needs to be improved.
We have just under 5 minutes. You get to pick a random question out of the bowl.
I'll give it to you. There you go.
It's up to you. I should have you guys do it.
You read questions better than I do.
I waste more time opening this.
Yeah.
How do you plan to increase diversity among U.S. soccer staff, committees, and the board? Would you encourage federation members to increase diversity? And if so, what methods would you share with them to do that?
Yeah. I'm so glad that you grabbed that one because it's very...
You grabbed that one.
Oh, yeah. Well, I felt like you led me to that, JP.
It.
It's like when we work together.
Impartial moderator.
You knew what I wanted to say, and you just asked the right question.
Okay.
So diversity is essential. And take it from someone that came from an affluent community, grew up blue collar. My dad was from Rhode Island, Italian American, and was the first in the generation to become successful. And I didn't have much diversity in my town. You know what gave me diversity? And you know this, one of my best friends, Edson Buttle, soccer. Yeah. Soccer showed me the world. I got to fly all over the world and see that the world was not Westport, Connecticut. And the world is beautiful, our country is beautiful, it's multicultural. And my entire career, I didn't have a Spanish-speaking coach. I mean, how on earth is that possible in a country where we have so many players that come from these incredible cultures and these backgrounds that are predisposed, many of them, to love this game? So the Jonathan Gonzalez example is a high-profile one of, we had a player that we blamed for playing for another country. I mean, how arrogant is that for us as a nation to say that's his fault? You know, you got to love the crest. Why would he love the crest if at a young age it meant nothing to him? Because we didn't go in his community and say this is about health, it's about wellness. And in the Latino community, obesity is a serious problem. So this is bigger than winning World Cups and making sure players put on our jersey. It's about Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. It needs to mean something to be a part of this membership. And if you play it at the local level, high school, rec, you mean as much to the membership as the person that's on the TV playing in a World Cup. You're the same thing. So we need to hire a director with the experience, the nous, and the culture to help us get into these communities and offer a membership that means something to them. I've reached out to Hercules Gomez and Hugo Perez and people that are frustrated because no one's asked for their help, and they've offered it. Jonathan Gonzalez just needed a phone call. That's all he needed. And we were so wrapped up in our World Cup bids and our election that no one thought, has anyone called Jonathan and said, you know what, you're a fantastic player. We really hope that you choose us because you are us. And we need a board, we need a federation, and we need a team that's representative of this country. I mean, we're a country of women and men and different religions, different ethnicities, different backgrounds, dual nationals. Our board should look like that. Our teams should look like that. And if we don't have a department focusing on that, how do we expect to get there? So a lot of my projects, the inner city ones, the Over-Under project to put put soccer hoops underneath basketball, or soccer goals underneath basketball hoops. I better get that pitch better. It came from flying around South America and noticing that, although my friends in South America say, well, no, we let them put hoops over our soccer goals. But Steve Nash, I called him, and I said, you know, you're a basketball guy. And he said, well, I'm more of a soccer guy, but yeah, I'm a basketball guy. I said, do you think this could work? I mean, do you think the basketball community and the municipalities and the ones that have the focus on other sports, do you think that they'd be interested in this? And he said, absolutely, and I'm surprised we haven't started. I called Ed Foster-Simeon, someone doing an amazing job in the inner city communities, building fields, and he said, Kyle, you know, love the idea. So how many times do we hear this? Love the idea, no execution. We have a diversity task force, or we did. Go click on the link on the website. It leads you to a blank page. Why? 9 months ago it disbanded because they were so frustrated. No one was focusing on this investment, staff, that their full-time job should be on that.
There's not enough time left.
Especially the way I answer questions, there's not enough time.
No, but you did well. You had like 31 seconds, but that's not enough time to pick another question,
Okay.
but you do have a chance to make a closing statement.
Okay, thank you. No disrespect, I'm gonna stand up.
No, stand up, stand up.
Thanks again for letting us sit here and give you our vision for soccer moving forward. And that's what we need is a soccer vision. We should get less caught up on who should be the next president. We should really start to think as we head towards the AGM that will be probably one that I know many people in this room have been going for many years, and you've never seen one like this. That's good, we care. Let's channel that care and the hysteria that was born out of failing to qualify for a World Cup to elect the president that focuses on the culture. You are the culture. You should elect this president. It should be your choice. And in 4 years, if we get up here and say, we'll do this, we'll do that, you should make sure we don't continue. We need accountability. We need transparency. And the tone I want to set as a president is one that gets away from a culture that I'm really worried if it metastasizes, we're going to kill what's beautiful about this game. I've spoken to many former players, current players, administrators, coaches, associations, and one thing that's offered to me is, you know, I love the ideas. You have my support. I'm just a bit worried about what happens if I say that publicly. The political retribution for supporting an idea or a person. That's due to years of patronage and these side deals and this opacity that has led to a culture that is toxic right now. We should be able to know who our leader is, who they serve, and it can't be a special interest. It can't be a small group. It has to be the membership. The membership is not way up at the top. That's what the membership created. The membership enjoys that. They're the consumer. They're the ones that go to the stadiums, that watch the games. I've played in an empty stadium. It's no fun. That's not a culture. And how do you create a culture? You do it locally. We're not going to outspend the Premier League. We're not going to outspend La Liga. And by the way, that's not competition. That's soccer. I fell in love with AC Milan and Arrigo Sacchi's team in Van Basten. I watched this video. My neighbor was from Holland. How lucky is that? You know, Malcolm Gladwell's serendipity of, if he wasn't there, I wouldn't have found this video. I wouldn't have fallen in love with Cruyff and Rinus Michels and what they did. We need to go back to this idea that the membership matters. So this opportunity, although it came with a heartache and a heartbreak, this opportunity is ours. And we should take it to elect a leader that's going to serve a membership. Because if we miss this opportunity, I don't want to be dramatic, but the women have told me that their success is papering over cracks if you look at the youth level. The men just failed to qualify for a World Cup. The soccer product is broken. And it's broken not way up there, it's broken way down here. And if we miss this opportunity, we're going to qualify for the next World Cup. Our women, because they're amazing, are going to win another gold medal. They're going to win another World Cup. We're going to get the 2026 bid. And what's the narrative? The narrative is nothing's wrong. Something's wrong, and we need a new leader, and we're going to get one. So thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Good
stuff.
Thanks. Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is for the next person. That's not nice.
I was going to say, he stole the water.
I know. The collaboration doesn't start by taking people's waters.
Let's introduce candidate number 3, Steve Gans. Steve, you can make an opening statement. Hope had a podium. Kyle stood up. You could sit down. You do whatever you'd like.
I think I'll sit down.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Okay. So 90 seconds. So thank you, everyone. So a slightly bigger crowd than was at my spotlight session yesterday. I announced my candidacy for this position to challenge the incumbent last May, now, boy, 9 months ago. And I did it because, well, people asked me to do it, but I did it because I felt and I saw that there were huge problems in this game, and I was experiencing them just like so many of you have experienced them, from youth to pro, to the development system, to the national team. What happened October 10th was not a moment frozen in time. Rather, it was a manifestation of these kind of problems that many of us saw way back last May and before. So I actually don't know why that was the catalyst for so much change in this election. But we're here. We have 8 candidates, and that's better than 1 candidate and no challengers. This is a huge job. This is a $100 million organization with 150 employees. But it's not any $100 million organization with 150 employees. It's our soccer organization. So it demands 2 really important skill sets. You have to have extreme and deep organizational leadership experience, and you need business experience, commensurately deep. But that's not enough. You need deep and continuous and broad soccer experience. And I humbly submit that of the candidates, I'm the only candidate that has both of those qualities. I've been involved in this game my whole life since my father came from Germany and passed that passion down to me and dragged me to semi-pro games when I was 2 and 3 and until this day. Many of you know I'm commonly referred to as the lawyer, but I'm not just a lawyer. I left a law firm and ran companies for 20 years as president and chief operating officer. So I respectfully submit that I have those combination of qualities that are necessary. And I was once with a team called the Baltimore Blast in the Major Indoor Soccer League. And that league had a commissioner named Earl Foreman. And Earl Foreman actually took early retirement because the league was doing really well. And they brought in a very experienced businessman to run that league. But he was gone within 1 year because he didn't get the soccer part. That underscores how important this choice is, a combo of business and a combo of soccer. We all need to fix what we've all experienced as problems, and we can do it together. And I look forward to hopefully doing that with you and talking with you, JP.
Thank you, Steve. First question, it's been the goal of U.S. youth soccer and our member state associations to align more closely with the Federation. What are your plans to utilize states so that they become of great value to U.S. soccer? And in what areas do you see increased involvement between U.S. youth soccer state associations and the Federation?
So I find that the first question to be a very interesting question because it's asking sort of how can we bring the states back in? Well, the states have been there. The states have been wanting to participate in a major way the whole time. When I announced in May, I went on a listening tour, and my first formal stop in the listening tour was in Frisco, Texas, to the AGM of the USYS. And what I heard from so many presidents and EDs and board members of state associations was that they've not been listened to anymore. They have been disrespected. They've wanted to participate for a very long time, and they're not participating. The knowledge that the states have is deep. The people in the trenches absolutely can contribute and should contribute to the decisions that U.S. soccer makes. So the question I find interesting because they've been waiting to be included for a very long time. And to a fairly recent time they were, and we want to return that. In terms of actual ideas with respect to what to do, I want to put state coaches on the youth technical working group and make that youth technical working group be something that's real, because it's basically been a show up until now, and we want to put those state coaches on it. And those player development initiatives, which are developed, with those coaches will be implemented from the states up. When the state associations tell U.S. Soccer that the huge attrition rate at U13, part of it is because of the birth year initiative, U.S. Soccer will listen to that. Those are the kind of dynamics we're talking about. In terms of other initiatives, I think we can do a lot more with licensing of coaches so that the ratio of players to licensing coaches improves, and I think the states and the federation can work together that way as well.
Second question, the youth soccer landscape in the U.S. is fractured. Growing the game is essential to our future success. As the next president of U.S. Soccer, what is your plan to address the youth system and create greater alignment between the federation and its members to grow the game from the grassroots up to the highest levels of competitive play?
So again, I'll go back to my first stop in Frisco, and there's so many great people I met, so many memorable moments I had, JP. And I don't know if he's out there, but I can see Dan and others, so a lot of your colleagues. So Hugh Goodrich of Western New York, and if you're there, Hugh, so I'm now proving that I do use this story all the time. Yes, it's fractured. Hugh took a napkin, Starbucks napkin, and he drew a horizontal line, and above that line he put the number 4 million, representing how many registered players there are and how many dollars go to U.S. Soccer. Underneath that line, he drew 3 vertical lines, and those vertical lines said 3.1 USYS, 500,000 US Club, 400,000 AYSO. And he said to me, Steve, U.S. Soccer is not looking beneath that top line. And what is going on beneath that top line is utter chaos, utter chaos. You have fighting within sanctioning organizations. In Massachusetts, we have 2 state cups for no other reason than competition between sanctioning organizations. I advise parents all the time who don't understand the difference between ECNL and DA and NPL and NEP and why they have to have 2 cards for their children. This, again, contributes to the attrition rate at U13. So this was the first thing I learned, and I have a 21-point platform. And within this platform, and I've said many times now, this is probably the 10th time publicly, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to have a task force and committee, and that committee is going to meet. The first thing we're going to tackle, I don't know if it's the first thing we'll solve, but the first thing we'll tackle is this infighting between sanctioning organizations, and we will get people under the same tent. With respect to the state associations in particular, well, everybody's got to play by the same rules. They are hamstringed by the fact that often they're playing under different rules, and the different sanctioning organizations are. So we're going to make sure that that landscape is the same, and we're going to stop that fracturing. The other part that I would say is that we're going to make sure that ODP is a huge part, re-energized, and a huge part of that landscape.
Third question, what is your overall opinion as to the effectiveness of the Development Academy, and what alternatives, changes, or additions would you propose? What is your vision of the player pathway in the United States?
Okay, so how much time do we have? Because
8:17.
Okay,
not enough.
So like so many of you, you're all in the trenches. And I say that with the highest respect. And we all have our own trench experience, if you will. And you know, I do stuff from youth to pro, to the Premier League, player side, management side. But I have been steeped in youth for a long time now. And my trench experience, if you will, is in the Development Academy. 2 boys were in the Development Academy. 1 went through it. 1 we took out. On the board of that Development Academy club, lawyered for that Development Academy club. And when I talk about in the trenches, I have a shared experience with so many of you, which is waking up one day and having an edict come down from 30,000 feet in Chicago. That's kind of stunning and shocking. But most importantly, has not taken into account the knowledge that the people in the trenches have. I know the Development Academy well. Under my presidency, there'll be huge changes in the Development Academy, huge changes, because in a nutshell, the Development Academy, in my opinion, is creating players without joy. We lack the production of players with joy. And how do I know that? I know that because there are many boys very close to me, including my own son, who was in the Development Academy 7 years, and ultimately, because of crazy rules from the U.S. Soccer Federation that sucked the life out of that experience, ultimately, we asked the school he committed to whether he could leave and play a year of high school. And that's a very difficult decision, right? Because we operate under the tautology in the Development Academy that if you commit to a school or you're going through that so you can get to a great school or otherwise, or get even higher, that if you ever leave, the school will pull that commitment or scholarship. And there was even an example of that in our club. But you're a parent, and you see your son, who you've passed down that passion to, and my dad was from Germany, he passed down that passion to me, and to see that, my wife and I, to see that waning in my son was very painful. And so we had a very difficult decision. And we actually went to the school he committed to, haltingly, and said, would it be possible for him to play a year of high school and not play his senior year in the Development Academy? And to the recruiting coach's credit, he said yes. And my son got his joy back by playing for Newton South High School in Newton, Massachusetts, not playing his final year in the Development Academy. Not the same quality, but so much more that brought back the important things of the game. And this is just about a year ago, and he just completed his freshman year and was named one of the top freshmen in New England just a couple of weeks ago. So we know that Messi goes through the most significant academy in the world, and yet he plays with joy. We're creating players without joy. I'm going to give you one example, and there are many of them, because I was in the Development Academy for 7 years, where every half year there'd be a new stricture that came down from, every season, that came down from Chicago and made it very difficult for the kids and sucked the joy out of it. One of them, because it contrasts with regular club soccer, non-Development Academy club soccer. There's a FIFA rule of substitution. If you get pulled in the 14th minute, you can't go back in. What's the policy behind that? My guess is the policy behind it is, at each more severe stricture, U.S. Soccer says, we're not doing well enough, we want to make these kids more professional. So let them learn the FIFA rule. Let them learn if they don't start well and they're pulled, they won't go back in. That rule is so counterproductive to developing great players, I can't tell you. I coach many of these kids. There were 5 kids I coached on this Development Academy team at a young age. And they would come to me before games and say, the Cornell coach is here, the Tufts coach is here. If I have 2 bad touches, I will be pulled. It's 1,000 knife cuts. If the idea is to make the kids more professional, then let them do it as a coach's decision. In other words, if a coach wants to say, for some reason they don't want to put them back in, they can do that. But let's not make it so hard and fast. Last point. Let's talk about making kids more professional. The typical Development Academy environment is a sterile one. 40 parents who are white-knuckled, holding onto the fence because they're so invested. No cheering, and 1 USSF assessor. What's the typical high school game? 100 fans? You play a rival under the lights? 1,000 fans. Well, which milieu, which environment is more conducive to creating a pro-like experience, something where you can develop? Well, I will tell you that my son was used to playing in front of 40 people, and he played his rival under the lights and played in front of 800, 1,000 people. And this freshman year, he led his school to the Final Four and played in front of 3,000, 4,000 people. And I think in that particular part of it, high school prepared him for
Pick a
soccer.
bonus question out of the bowl.
Last thing I want to say about pathway, though, because the question was about pathway too, and that is you have to have more than one pathway. One pathway creates more cost. One pathway makes it so you miss many players. And we have to have multiple pathways. The ODP has to be assimilated again with the Development Academy.
Okay. When you hear the term pay to play, what comes to mind? Do you think it's possible that some of the non-MLS DA clubs can charge fees and truly be accessible to any youth? You have about a minute 45.
I'm sorry, go ahead, JP.
Oh, sorry.
Can you actually read it to me again?
Oh,
sorry.
sure. When you hear the term pay to play, what comes to mind? And do you think it's possible that some of the non-MLS DA clubs can charge fees and truly be accessible to any youth?
That's a great question. So pay-to-play is a huge problem. I know of a club that's charging $3,700 a year right now to start before any other fees. We're going to use part of the surplus to give back and to ameliorate the pay-to-play problem in this country for sure. The non-MLS Development Academy club fees are definitely a barrier. I was on the board of one. It's heartbreaking where someone's good enough to be in the club and you don't have enough money, scholarship money to give. So we have to use part of the surplus for that. We have to create this whole scenario that is more accessible. I spoke to the president of Wisconsin. That's a place that does not have a development academy, and so many of you have states like that. Why should a kid from a state that doesn't have a development academy not be able to dream as much as a kid in a state that has a development academy? We have to re-energize the ODP program. The development academy has to be assimilated with the ODP program, and we have to make this game more accessible.
Not enough time, 17 seconds for another question, but you do get to make a final statement.
Sure, I do. Well, thank you everyone for listening. You know, in my town, we just had a mayoral race of 3 mayoral candidates, and I will tell you that I was really annoyed with all the emails and the calls and all the collateral materials I got. So this has been a long and exhausting process for everyone, and appreciate everyone hanging in. So much has changed in this race. When I announced in May, and I talked to my partners, I said it would be me against the incumbent, and sort of told them what the demands might be, and here we are with the incumbent not running and 7 other people in it. And I appreciate you all hanging in. This is a really important organization to all of us, and this next decision is very, very important. If you agree with the idea that it's a huge organization and a nonprofit business, and it needs someone with this business background, and you agree that it can't just be someone with a business background, but it's someone who has to have a huge and deep soccer background, I very much respectfully hope that you will consider me for your vote. For those of you who have committed to me, I am eternally grateful. For those of you who have not yet, you know, I hope that you will consider over the next 3 weeks that, and we can continue this dialogue. This organization, from youth to adult to athletes, national team on down, to the professionals, because you cannot be a truly great soccer nation unless you have a great professional setting. All of these sectors have issues, and we can work together to make this organization and this soccer country respected and successful. I do a lot of work internationally, and I know that we are respected in some ways, but not in the ways that matter in the soccer world, and I think that we can do that. I really appreciate your time today, and JP, I appreciate it as well. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Steve. Good luck. Candidate number 4, please welcome Kathy Carter.
Do I need this? Not need this?
You can do whatever you'd like. You have
All
an
right.
opening statement. Sit, stand.
Stand, sit, stand.
Your preference.
Good afternoon. Are you tired yet? Not yet? Okay. Well, first and foremost, let me say thank you. Thank you to USYS, and thank you for the USC Convention for hosting all of us here in what has been the most aggressive speed dating experience I've ever had. And thank you guys for all your time. First, I'd like to shout out for all the candidates that have actually gotten into this race. It's been, I think, probably more than any of us had expected. But there's so much passion, not just with everyone that is running, but obviously with you. And I think that's what's been so exciting as I have gone out and had similar experiences in speaking to all of you. Obviously, as I've mentioned to most, I started as a 7-year-old player in this sport. And I stand here today, that same enthusiastic 7-year-old player that my parents had no idea what they were actually getting me into, my dad and his baseball cleats and his book about soccer, and I now stand in front of you as a 48, I'm admitting that, a 48-year-old executive who has spent her life in the game. A game that has given me everything, a game that you all are as passionate as I am about. What's been interesting, and I'm sure you've heard from everyone, the common themes that we've all heard. But most importantly, what I have identified is that there's an opportunity. There is an opportunity for us to grasp something that I think is far out of our reach today, but something that is big and audacious, and we have the ability to accomplish. I believe that we can become the greatest soccer nation in the world. It's a big idea, and something that I think we can all get up out of bed and think about. But in order to do that, we have to have the best and most players, coaches, administrators, referees, and volunteers. We have to have the best professional leagues and the best leagues in general. We have to have the best fan culture. And most importantly, at least from a fan standpoint, we have to have teams that represent our country on all levels that dominate. But it's up to you, actually, to decide if that's a vision that we can achieve. Because it's up to us and that whoever you choose to be the leader that gives you the voice, empowers you to lead, to do the work that is required to make this big, audacious vision become reality. And that is what is so exciting about this whole experience. And as I think about it, you have the power to elect a leader that will have the ability to put our women's game back on the forefront as I look not in the rearview mirror, but to the horizon of what we can be to drive opportunity, to drive diversity, and to drive change in not just our country, but in the world. So I look forward to answering the questions, picking out of the hat, and talking a little bit more about that. But I encourage you to vote for a leader that will have the ability to mend the fences that we all have experienced that need to be mended so that we can continue forward in a great game that all of you spend your lifeblood, your time, and most importantly, your energy to create. I believe, and I think you all believe, that we have the ability to create and to become the greatest soccer nation in the world.
Thank you, Kathy.
I'll sit down.
Have a seat. First question, it's been the goal of U.S. youth soccer and our member state associations to align more closely with the Federation. What are your plans to utilize states so that they become of great value to U.S. soccer? And in what areas do you see increased involvement between U.S. youth soccer state associations and the Federation?
Well, first of all, I have to tell everybody that the lavalier is right on my back, right on my bra, and that's terribly uncomfortable. So
first one that said that.
Yep. So apologies. I had to get a little comfortable there. Listen, there's an awful lot that we've got to do. I've had a lot of conversations with people about how do we need to empower you. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the work actually happens in the state associations. And that's where a kid doesn't come out of the womb and become a professional. A kid comes out of the womb not even knowing how to walk. It's in your programs that actually our coaches begin and our athletes begin. And so we've got to figure out a way that we continue to build with you a stronger base. Because ultimately, our strength and our ability to achieve the vision of becoming one of the greatest soccer countries in the world is only when you are successful at bringing kids into the game. So from my perspective, we must do everything to give you more empowerment, whether that is creating registration programs that the Federation can put in place to help continue to drive the message of inclusion and opportunity, or whether that is creating additional resources in the regions that actually help for each one of the state associations to be successful.
Second question, youth soccer landscape in the USA is fractured, as we've mentioned before, with all of the different groups, and growing the game is essential to our future success. As the next president of U.S. Soccer, what is your plan to address the youth system and create greater alignment between the federation and its members to grow the game from the grassroots up to the highest levels of competitive play?
Well, we've talked a lot about this in every discussion, and I think that, and I obviously put forth an idea of an independent commission, not because we don't have the answers, but because I don't think we actually have fully identified all of the areas of the problem that will allow us to make the best decisions as we go forward. And it's going to be hard, and I've said that to numerous people. And I also don't believe that we can put Band-Aids on this solution. So I'm not going to just suggest that we change the DA a little bit. I think we've got to address everything. I think everything's got to it has to be on the table. And I think we have to really dig deep to determine how we can best serve the kids and serve the families. And I think that's something that gets lost in some of the competition. And I think we've got to figure out how we level the playing field, which is no surprise to anyone here, and give back more of the autonomy to the states to do the work that I think that you guys are capable of doing.
Third question, what is your overall opinion as to the effectiveness of the Development Academy? What alternatives, changes, or additions would you propose? What's your vision of the player pathway in the United States?
Well, I have had lots of conversations with everybody about this, as has everyone. And I think we've all identified that as a result of the DA, there's a tremendous number of unintended consequences that have occurred. We have kids that can't afford to play. We have parents that are spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for their children to come in at an early age. I also think that the DA has caused us to have a branding issue in that many youth players and their families don't actually know how to navigate the system, number one. But number two, if they don't achieve at the DA, if they don't get into the DA, then they're actually being told that they're not good enough. And I think that's a problem for us in the sense that we're losing kids as a result of that. And so I think then as I continue to look through the problem, that there's so many other issues that have occurred. We've taken away the optionality from our families and our kids to determine how they want to have their soccer experience if they have a desire to continue forward. And as a result of that, kids are, again, dropping out of the system. So from my standpoint, what I have definitely looked at is how do we actually evolve the program? And while I'm certainly an advocate, and I have written for you that I'd be a proponent of adding additional revenue from surplus to create scholarships, I think we need to do more to reduce the barriers of entry for coaches, whether that be subsidizing coaching education. We've got to continue to work with you on creating more opportunities for the referees and how they get assigned to games. But ultimately, those to me are Band-Aids. We got to fix the whole thing. We got to do the hard work. And so this to me is the crux of the decision for you in the audience. Do you want a Band-Aid? Or do you want to fix the whole thing? And I will tell you, the experience to do that does not reside with everyone, but it certainly resides with me. I've got the experience, and I've got the love of this game, that I'm going to put it first. That we must evolve what's happening out there. You all know it, you said it, you feel it, and there's a great opportunity. If we can fix it, if we can evolve it, if we can give you back and empower you to do the work that you need to do, we can become one of the greatest soccer nations in the world. If we don't, we slap a couple Band-Aids on this, and we just simply change the DA a little bit, or do this, or increase ODP without addressing the root of the problem, we'll be back here in 4 years. We'll be talking about the same issues. We will not have swung big and tried to go large. And we will not have moved forward in our quest to become, and I'm going to say it again because I'm actually really fired up about it, become one of the greatest soccer nations in this world. So I think we've got a lot of work to do. But the power resides with you. You will have a voice. Because without your voice and without your participation, none of this can happen.
You get to pick out of the bowl. What are your plans to reach youth players in underserved communities, many of whom have been ignored? Do you view this segment as a growth opportunity?
Yes, very much so. What's interesting to me is, and I've talked to a lot of people about this too, is we can't quite identify, we know how many registered players there are, but I haven't yet to see a list or a study that can tell me how many people are actually playing. And I think as we think about the system that we've created, I think there's been a parallel system that's been created alongside of that. And that's, obviously that's started now in the youth space. It's been something that we faced in the adult space for some time. But ultimately what we've got to understand is how many kids are actually playing? Because if our job is to bring the most players into our system, let alone coaches and referees and administrators, et cetera, we've got to start to identify who are they? Now, I think we all intuitively think we know who they are, but we've got to actually do the work to understand how many are there, and how do we then bring them in? Because I was speaking to people earlier today talking about how we've driven kids out of playing in the inner cities because both of cost but access. And I think we've got to figure out how we serve that community, whether it's inner city or it's the Hispanic market. And obviously, there are kids that are playing. Because our game actually, at its core, all it does is require a kid and a ball. And you can play. And so what's happening is they are outside of our system, which means we're not seeing them. We're not identifying them. We're not scouting them, because we need to have more scouts. And ultimately, we need to bring them back in. I've had a tremendous amount of experience with not just our Hispanic market here, but the Mexican-American market in particular. And there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of kids that are playing every week, every day. We see them coming through the system or through other programs that have been created. And we must bring them in because they are an absolute opportunity for us. And not just because we can develop the next great national team player, but if we can give a kid an opportunity to come into our programs and eventually go to college or play for their community, and we never know what kind of output that they will give to society. And I think that's part of our mission as people and as volunteers and as administrators in the sport, is to give kids more opportunity. And not just the rich kids that can afford to play. That's one of the things I think we've got to do, is really work on the underserved communities to bring them back into the system and give them more exposure and opportunity.
You have time, like 4 minutes left, so you can pick another one.
All right, let's do it. I'd like the green M&M, please.
What is your position regarding the current format of the referee program? Will you replace the structure and determine the SRAs?
Yeah, see, I actually, it's been an interesting process as I've gone through this to understand more and more of this issue, and the idea of federal versus state, which is really what we're talking about here. And should the federal mandate the referees, or should the states be autonomous in that? And I think this is one of many issues that I think we can continue to look at how best to organize. And what I would say is I'm a strong advocate of strong states. Because ultimately, I think it's in our diversity that we can celebrate our uniqueness and we can actually deliver our best results. But today, if we centralize too much, I think we start to lose that individuality that actually can occur. Now, could be either minimum standards or opportunities for us to put in certificates and things like that to sort of manage the how and what they are learning, or how they're performing, or what those rules and regulations, for lack of a better term, would be. But I think that you all need to be in the place to actually manage your people on a day-to-day basis and your community. And I think we need to be continuing to empower you. I've told a lot of people that one of my favorite companies is Zappos, not the least of which is because I can buy a lot of shoes from them. But what they have done is they've empowered every member of their community to actually be able to answer and solve problems. And so you call them up and you have a problem with an order, and they can solve it on the phone, which is not something we get with our cable companies. But we haven't given you the ability to solve your problems. We haven't empowered you. And I believe that that is where our strength is going to come from. And I believe that with the referees, and I believe that in a lot of other areas of our federation and our relationship with the state associations. And so we must figure out how we evolve the culture give and empower you to drive this game forward.
You made it to your 5 questions, so now would like to get a closing statement from you.
You bet. Well, as I said when I opened up, it's been a pleasure. I have obviously spent the majority of my professional career on the business side of the game. It has been a terrific 25 years. And I stand here today ready to resign my position at Soccer United Marketing, which I realize is in some cases a nasty word, but I'm going to resign that position to serve you, our members. And I'm looking forward to doing that because of who all I've met, because of who all I've spoken to, because ultimately what you all bring to bear is the future of our game. And while I have experience in the professional game, I contend that it starts with you. And so, as president of the U.S. Soccer Federation, I will be your voice. I will be your voice at the board. I will be your voice in the membership. I will be your voice to make sure that the people that we hire and those that are operating our federation are listening. I will be your thought partner for how best to drive this game forward and how best for us to become the greatest soccer nation in the world. I thank you all, and as I've said before, you guys are, I'm sure, tired and just about done with all of us. You just have a couple, 3 more weeks to go for all of us to throw emails and phone calls at you. But I also want to, again, congratulate all my other candidates for all the work that they're doing to bring this discourse, and I hope the positive discourse, to the conversation. So I thank you all, and I wish you best of luck for the rest of the day.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thanks.
Good luck.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Okay.
All right.
Let me introduce the 5th candidate, Michael Winograd. Michael, how are you?
How are you, JP?
Good to see you.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Your choice, sit or stand for opening statement.
Opening statement? Well, it's the lawyer in me, I'll stand. Well, thank you, JP, and thank you all for coming here. I appreciate all of your time. I want to be your next president of U.S. Soccer, and I think I'm the best candidate to do it. And I want to focus on 3 key elements to that and why I think that's the case. I've got complete independence, I've got deep soccer knowledge and experience, and I've got deep business knowledge and experience. And so let me elaborate a little bit. I have no hidden agendas, I have no sponsors, I have no special ties to any of the constituents. On the soccer side, I have played soccer at the youth, collegiate, Division I at Lafayette College, and professional levels. I played 4 years at Division I at Lafayette and 3 years professionally in Israel. The youth level, I played in the Long Island Junior Soccer League in East New York and the East New York ODP. On the coaching side, I have coached youth for many years. I've coached collegiately at University of Richmond. And on the administration side, I've been on my local soccer board since 2009. And I have started up an A-League, 2nd Division professional A-League franchise from scratch with one other person. I handled everything on the soccer side. My friend handled everything on the business side until he left for San Jose, where he became GM of the Earthquakes the year they won the MLS Cup. I continued with the team, handed it off when I went to law school, and the team made it to the quarterfinals that season, in its inaugural season. I hired the coach. I established the grassroots program with the local clubs. I went in and helped them draft curricula and improve on curricula. I set up clinics. So I've really done it from all angles of the game, youth, collegiate, and professional. On the business side, in addition to having started up a professional team from scratch, for the last 17 years, I've been a lawyer at some of the best corporate law firms in the world. I went to law school just down the road at University of Pennsylvania, graduated with several honors, and working at these biggest firms, I've represented the largest clients in the world, banks, companies, in their biggest matters, from Microsoft to Samsung to Bank of America to FedEx Supply, you name it. We can talk a little bit about it when we get to some of the questions. But I look at that, and you know, I have been in the boardroom. I've been with CEOs. I flew to London last week for a matter and represented the CEO of LGIM Properties. And LGIM Properties actually funded the development of St. George's Park, the state-of-the-art FA training facility in England. So I'm in the room with those folks. I know how to speak their language. And I've been doing what it takes to do this job for 17 years at the highest levels. At the same time, as I mentioned, I've served my community. I do a lot of pro bono. And I have been an adjunct law professor at Fordham University Law School for the last 14 years. So when I look at the job that needs to get done and the unification that needs to occur, you need a deep understanding of soccer, and I have that. You need the deep business experience and skills to negotiate and get people working together, and I've been doing that at the highest levels for the last 17 years, and again, I have complete independence. So I ask for your vote, and I look forward to the questions.
Thank you, Michael. Same questions for you. It's been a goal of U.S. Youth Soccer and our member state associations to align more closely with the Federation. What are your plans to utilize states so that they become of great value to U.S. Soccer? And in what areas do you see increased involvement between U.S. Soccer, state associations, and the Federation?
So this really goes to governance. There are different ways to govern, and you see it in companies. Some companies are run as dictatorships, some are more egalitarian, and there are different styles. In companies, those different styles can work. It's not going to work in an organization like U.S. Soccer with its mission and its constituencies. The number one key strategic initiative that has been in my platform since the very beginning is inclusive, merit-based, transparent governance. And that means that any critical decision that U.S. Soccer makes has to include input from the folks that it's going to be affecting. And what does that mean? Forming advisory committees, and I've used the word influential advisory committees. You need advisory committees that are actually going to be weighing in and significantly influencing, if not making the decision. So when you look at the youth and state association level, for example, decisions on birth year registration, how many people were brought into that decision? Who was it made by? Because when you bring people in, you have the benefit not only of having a better product at the end, you get more input from folks who have decades of boots on the ground experience and knowledge that you can't possibly gain by yourself, no matter how smart you are. You make a better product, you include more voices, you get a sense of ownership of everybody, and weighing in on the decision, and ultimately you wind up with a much more unified, better system.
Second question, Michael. U.S. youth soccer landscape in the U.S. is fractured with so many groups, and growing the game is essential to our future success. As the next president of U.S. Soccer, what is your plan to address the youth system and create greater alignment between the Federation and its members to grow the game from the grassroots up to the highest level?
And so I've talked a lot about mending the fracturing that's gone on. And there's no one-size-fits-all solution. This has to be a state-by-state solution. There's no way what's going to work in New Mexico is the same thing that's going to work in Maine, that's going to work in New Jersey or California. What we need to do is U.S. Soccer has state representatives, and those are the state associations. We need to go in with the state associations, bring the other parties who are interested, other leagues, et cetera, bring them to the table, and figure out the system and structure that's going to make most sense in that state. And listen, I've spoken to obviously a lot of you, and some states will say, everything's working great. We've got ASO at the rec level, and then U.S. Youth above them, and then U.S. Club above them, and then the DA is above that, and people sort of know where things stand, and everything's working great. Most of the states are saying that's not the case. When I lived it with my kids and coaching for 3 years, I tried to figure it out, and it was really difficult. People would say, well, I didn't understand, why do I need 2 passes? I need this pass for that game, this pass for that tournament. And then people are saying, well, this league's better, but teams from this league seem to beat teams from that league, and this league has 6 divisions, so how could it be so elite? We need to get together, figure out what's going to work in that state, and then clearly define that. We need to make sure that we're clearly defining it for the consumer, the parent, the child, the coach, so that they know the different paths, they know which elements and which leagues fit in to where. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that there won't be competition. In some states, you may have hierarchical structure, maybe even with promotion and relegation. In some states, you may have situations where 2 leagues are going to say, well, we're going to compete against each other, and that's fine. This is America. We want competition. Private businesses are allowed to say, I think I can do it better. But what we need to make sure in that case are two things. Number one, we need to make sure that that structure is still making the most amount of sense for the kids. If there's going to be competition, can we at least do it where we're not competing geographically, so we're not diluting kids and forcing them to drive 2.5 hours for games? And number two, in all events, we need an absolute even playing field. You cannot have rules that are different for one organization and another than they are for another organization when those organizations are competing. And that means if you're allowed to double card in one, then you can double card in another. If a DOC in one has to get a certain license, the DOC in the other has to get a certain license. We need to figure out all of those issues and make sure that the rules governing the competitors are absolutely equal. And then it's just the product stands on its own. If you can do a product, great. And again, once you have that even playing field where there's competition and a structure that makes sense, we have to clearly define it to the consumer so the consumer understands what is U.S. soccer. You explain to them what is U.S. soccer, what are the state associations, what does it mean to be in this umbrella, the quality control that it implies, the putting the kids' interests first that it implies, so that they know this is where I want to stay.
Third question, what is your overall opinion as to the effectiveness of the Development Academy? What alternatives, changes, or additions would you propose? Your vision of the player pathway in the United States.
So the player pathway in the U.S., when you talk about the development academies, you're talking about a very small sliver of all the kids playing. You're talking about that elite path for kids aspiring to get onto the national team or play professionally. And so what I've proposed is state soccer centers for that elite path in each state. And that means you put in a state soccer center, you build a building with 1 or 2 fields, and it houses a full-time state soccer director. That state soccer director is in charge, and by the way, it's going to be a competitive salary. Right? We need to get qualified people, make it a viable alternative to coaching in college or even coaching in MLS or other pro leagues. Once we get that established, that state soccer director is going to be responsible for identifying and training that elite player. That doesn't mean we can't have ODP and all the other elements that are out there, but we're going to do it in a structured way so that there is a organized, structured, clear path for those players. I would love to have the state associations move into that building as state representatives, but some states would love it, some states, that's a matter of logistics. But in any event, once that clear path is defined, we're going to be moving in the same direction. You asked about the DA, and the DA, we need a form of highly competitive soccer as part of the path to, for the elite player. The DA has some issues. There are some things about the DA that are pretty good, and they've done okay, but there are issues with it. Do kids really need to travel that much? Can we organize it in a way that kids don't have to travel as much as they are? I mean, I coached my son, who was the oldest, for 3 years. The first 3 years of his travel in a town of 25,000. We had 11 kids on the team. I coached them. I trained them every week. 3 of those kids out of the 11 are now playing on the 2 best DA teams in New Jersey. One of them actually is down in Florida right now, got selected to the U.S. national team camp and in the first U15 national team camp. My son, who plays up a year in the DA, has had to miss 3 or so days of school just for games, not tournaments, traveling to Montreal, traveling to New Hampshire, to New England, down to D.C. It can't be that there's not enough talent in the New York, New Jersey area to fill up most of their schedules. That will reduce costs, and it will reduce what we're doing to these kids and the commitment we're forcing in that respect. Identification. Are we really, are we identifying the best players? Are they really filling up the absolute best players in the Development Academy? You've got pay-to-play issues. Some kids can't afford it. Some kids just can't get there because it's a 2-hour drive to the nearest DA. So we need to make sure that regardless of what happens, we are ensuring that we're casting a broad net and getting the true talent that exists in this country into that upper echelon. And that means, like I was talking about with the state soccer director, when you're scouting to figure out that path to the national team, it can't be calling up a DA coach and saying, who are your 2 best players? And I understand they're understaffed and working hard, but we need to make sure we're scouting objectively and comprehensively across all leagues to make sure we're getting those players.
You get to pick out of the bowl. If you are elected, do you plan to utilize the knowledge, expertise, and platforms of the other candidates to make further progress within the Federation? And if so, how would you utilize them? And alternatively, if another candidate is elected, how will you stay involved to continue the progress of the Federation? We have time, so maybe you should address, let me do it separately. If you're elected, do you plan to utilize the knowledge, expertise, and platforms of the other candidates to make further progress within the Federation?
Absolutely. You know, it has been a great pleasure getting to meet all of the candidates. I like to count many of them my friends now. And there are traits in them that are, you know, pertinent to this job and certainly helpful for U.S. soccer. There is absolutely no question that one of the first calls or set of calls that I would make as president would be to the other candidates who I am happy to have been on this campaign with. And it would be a conversation. It would be a conversation with each one. Do you want to be involved? And if you do, let's talk about how to get you involved. Because, you know, as you guys have seen, we've made it through, I guess I'm number 5, and you'll see all 8 of us. There are skills and strengths in each of us, and I want to make sure that those of the others are utilized in a meaningful way to help U.S. soccer move forward.
Same thing, I just broke it up, so this is really a 4th question for you. If another candidate is elected, how will you personally stay involved to continue the progress of the Federation?
You know, so obviously I want to be president, and feeling good about the way things are going. In the event that I weren't elected, I would have to, you know, see what conversations are had. I got involved in this not for the presidency. I didn't say, I've got a great job that I love. I've been doing it for a very long time. I got involved because I said, I've lived through this now with my kids. I've seen what's going on with the fracturing and the confusion and the lack of clarity. I want to help make things better. And I think I'm the person to do it. I think I've got the skill sets. And people came to me and said, you know, you should really run for this reason and that reason. Look at what you've done, look at your experience. You've got all this business experience. And on top of that, a really deep soccer background. I played pro and coached college and managed professionally and done it all at the youth level and collegiate as well. So I, of course, want to do what I can to help U.S. soccer. And, you know, who knows what opportunities would be there.
You can pick another one. Still have a couple minutes. Given the financial position of the Federation, will you make funds available to areas of need in the grassroots soccer community, and what specific examples of grassroots funding support can you foresee?
You know, this in many ways goes to pay to play and making sure that kids have access to soccer. You know, the most critical, you know, kids should be able to play based on merit and passion, not how much their families make and not their family finances. We need to make sure that things are affordable and accessible. So if you look at the U.S. Soccer Foundation, for example, they're going into underrepresented communities and building fields. And they figured out we can do it not only by going to big companies and banks and soliciting money from the private sector, but we can actually tap into municipal funds. We can actually go and say, hey, you've got funds earmarked for infrastructure development. We'll use those funds, we'll develop the fields, and we'll put on programming to create more access to folks in underrepresented communities. Pay to play, when clubs are costing $3,000 or $3,500 plus travel and hotels, it's astronomical. And we need to bring those costs down. And I'll go through very quickly the 5 ways that I've talked about doing them. We've got a surplus that could go towards that. Public grant money, we need to invest in teams that make sure we're not leaving public grant money on the table. Organizations like U.S. Soccer Foundation, we should invest in those because they're doing a great job. Make them bigger, enable them to do a better job even, a broader job. Number 4, private equity firms. As I told you, we represent at my firm the largest private equity firms in the world, Bain Capital, TPG. So firms with $75 billion of assets under management. I told you last week I was with the folks who developed St. George's Park. We need to bring that private money in as well. And last are solidarity payments. And I'll say 2 very quick things about those. Solidarity payments are not just the payments you can get if you actually succeed, but it will create an upfront incentive for everybody with the hope of getting that money back to invest, to go to a whole funding source that we don't have access to be able to go to the local community, local business folks and residents and say, invest in my club, not just because it's the right thing to do, but hey, if we get it right, like I think we're going to, you're going to get that money back.
Closing statement.
You know, this has been a terrific opportunity to campaign and meet with everybody. and really put my energies towards one of the great passions in my life. As I've said before, there's a lot that needs to get done. U.S. soccer has made great strides. We've fallen a little behind in some areas. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be a lot of work. It's going to take perseverance and hard work and preparedness, and it's going to take intelligence and open-mindedness and candor. These are things that I've been doing for 17 years at the highest levels, getting people into rooms, figuring out paths forward. I've done it for the biggest companies, international, and figuring out how to, in real time, persuasively articulate a common path forward that people believe is the best path forward for everybody. And I think that's what I'd like to do for U.S. soccer, and that's what I will do, and together we're going to make U.S. soccer better.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you, JP. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Candidate number 6, Eric Winalda. Opening statement.
Say hi first.
Opening statement.
I'll keep it short. It's
How
like
are
when we
you?
were on TV.
How are you?
You always talk too much, so I had to shut up. Welcome, everybody. Anybody else tired? A lot of information, right? You frustrated, maybe? Wondering why we are in the position we're in? A lot of questions, a lot of talk, not a whole lot of solutions. And we're all sitting here asking ourselves, why? Or maybe, how did we get here? Or how could we get better? Anybody else tired of being told that it's your fault? Come on, there's a yes in there somewhere, guys. This is what happens when the Federation, in my opinion, actually that's not an opinion, it's a fact, does a poor job of being in the business that they should be in, and that's servicing the masses on all aspects, not just the youth and the adult, the pro. There are solutions, and there is a reason why we are where we are. When I joined this race, I wanted to fix things. I wanted to make it better because I care, because I've been there. I've been in your shoes. I've represented this country at the highest level, and I'm very privileged and honored to be able to have done that. But I think right now, the gloves have to come off. I'm not going to apologize for it. When I entered this thing, I told myself, just like every candidate, I'm going to stick a big platform on you, and that's going to be the answer. This is going to solve your problems. A bunch of paperwork about governance, a bunch of solutions that aren't solutions, they're just ideas. But there is a reason why we are where we are. And I didn't punch myself out in the first 2 rounds. And I didn't give you all the information simply because I didn't think that would be fair. I didn't think that that would be a fair representation of what I needed to know. If I'm going to be president, I got to know more than I did then. But I know enough now. Today is about solutions and the truth. And I think you deserve to hear the truth of why we are where we are. The good news in all of that is that when we have a federation that understands its role and understands what it should be doing, and understands its role in the global game, not just our little insulated bubble that we've created, that we can achieve great things. Because we are so much better than what we are right now. And in this room specifically, it's not your fault. It's our fault. That's what accountability sounds like. Not pointing the finger and deeming you as noise at this point. Because you're not noise. But you do have questions that need to be answered. What we're about to talk about will be probably the first time that I really let you on the inside. And we'll talk about some truths, but we're going to talk about solutions, okay?
First question.
Yep.
It's been the goal of U.S. youth soccer and our member state associations to align more closely with the Federation. What are your plans to utilize states so that they become of great value to U.S. soccer? And in what areas do you see increased involvement between U.S. youth soccer, state associations, and the Federation?
Okay, so first and foremost, the Federation has been operating in a different way. For those of you who don't know this, and this is how it affects this room specifically, is we are non-compliant with 13 statutes and a bunch of bylaws for FIFA. Now, I've heard other candidates in the last couple of minutes talk about, oh, we don't have a problem at the top. This is a problem at the bottom, and we need to fix it. We need to hire a bunch of people that are going to make it better. Hiring a bunch of people to continue to do this the wrong way doesn't fix anything. It doesn't whatsoever. The state associations, in my view, and I've taken a federalistic look at this, need to have autonomy. But is that me or
we're good? I think
did it happen to anybody else? Or somebody's back there flicking a switch.
Conspiracy theory.
There it is.
Our first conspiracy theory.
Yeah. Turn his mic off. But looking at it from a view of how this is happening and why this is happening, you need to understand something. The professional game does affect your business, and here's why. When we only service 18 markets, who's that put in a lurch? Everybody else. We've all talked about this relationship between SoccerNet and marketing, and of course, how the Federation has dealt with those relationships and Major League Soccer, but we've only serviced an elite group. When that happens, when we engage in that kind of business, because what they'll say is that it's the business of soccer. It's the soccer business, people. That's what it is. And when you don't understand, or at least when you do, the business of soccer and you don't understand the soccer business, you get in trouble. We've seen that. Our federation is currently dealing with some issues, with some lawsuits, and there's a reason for that too. The state associations have been cheated, in my opinion, because the Federation has not figured out a way to service all of them, because they've isolated much of their interest to basically provide a protection program for the MLS. What that means is that in many ways, we're all trying to figure out how to help Major League Soccer succeed. Well, this is what happens to the 99% when the 1% doesn't cooperate. We all feel it. All of us. There are many ways, and you've heard me argue about these topics, that our federation needs to engage more with our state associations, but needs to also provide some of those opportunities that don't exist right now to allow them to have the working budgets to continue to facilitate the game. Sound good?
Yep. The youth soccer landscape in the U.S. is fractured with so many different groups. Growing the game is essential to our future success. So as the next president of U.S. Soccer, what's your plan to address the youth system and create greater alignment between the Federation and its members to grow the game from the grassroots level to the highest level?
Alignment is a great word because it also goes along with compliance. We are not compliant, so why should we ask everybody to comply when we're not compliant? Now, I think that as far as how we've addressed this space, what we need to understand is what is our function? Why has the Federation taken a stance on being a part of your business and taking the reins on development? That is not the job of the Federation. The Federation is there to serve, they are to provide. They're not the source, they are a resource. Anywhere in the world, when you look at how soccer happens, soccer is celebrated at the youth level through our clubs. Create an academy system, and you all know this, you're all going to just kind of shake your head, or maybe you might have an internal reaction, but the academy system is a byproduct of the problem. They are the problem. Let's just say it. And that problem comes from a bigger issue. The Federation has integrated their ideas into we are in charge of the development of our players. What we all saw when the team didn't qualify, and I know Sunil's here, and his first comment was our first priority, first and foremost, is the development of our players. No, it's not. It is not. And the first thing out of Bruce's mind was, I don't know why you're asking me that. I don't know why you think it's the Federation's responsibility to develop players. That disconnect alone shows us that we don't know how to do the soccer business. We've engaged in a way of doing things that has complicated it for you. You need solutions and you need structure, but compliance is the key. We've just seen just a tip of the iceberg with the Jonathan Gonzalez situation, or a player, or I should say a club, having an issue with the solidarity payment. These are all massive pieces of the puzzle to you. This is the tip of the iceberg. This is the reason why your club exists, to develop players. And you deserve compensation for that. The whole idea so if you don't understand what the solidarity payment is and how it applies to you, Michael Essien came out of Africa. And then FIFA recognized that in his process and in the development of his career, eventually he was worth $26 million. And basically these African nations were getting pillaged and never compensated. And as a protection policy, FIFA interjected and said, all right, that can't happen. We need to take care of the development academies and or clubs. And that's why that's been put in place. That needs to be put in place here. That when you develop a player, and through those mechanisms, when we are FIFA compliant, then they make sense. Right now, none of this makes sense.
Third question, what is your overall opinion as to the effectiveness of the Development Academy? What alternatives, changes, or additions would you propose?
I think we already answered that. Look, academies are a big part of the problem, okay? But again, when you only service 18 markets, and until last time I checked, it's not my responsibility to worry about Toronto, Montreal, or Vancouver. And we do have 2 teams in New York, and we do have 2 teams in Los Angeles. So developmental academies should represent the best players, and they should be directly connected with the professional level. But when you only figure out a way, or you have a system that is only catering to a small group of teams, then it gives everybody else no opportunity to grow, 0. And this is a different way of thinking. We know how it works at the top level, and my business acumen has been challenged in this regard. Let's clear this up. 50% of the revenue that our federation brings in comes from where? Television revenue. You've just described the last 16 years of my life. Nobody understands this space better than I do. And I can tell you without hesitation that the deal that we have right now in place is not a fair representation of what we are worth. We've looked at it as some sort of insurance policy. Thank God we have that $47 million coming in the next couple of years until 2022, because that floats the boat. When you don't engage in the business of soccer and you don't take care of soccer, the product, your business will fail. And we'll be sitting in this room 4 years from now, just as frustrated, talking about all the same problems and pointing fingers like I just did, sorry, unless we fix it. It needs to be, the cohesion in this is the most important part. Our academies need to be in as many professional environments as possible. That's the light at the end of the tunnel, not just because the Federation decided to get in the business of creating winners and losers and determining who the best players are. That is not how this works. And our league certainly is not based on competitive merit, and nor is our youth system. Change that, you change it all.
You get to fish in the bowl.
All right. Oh, geez, I got the next one, too. You love this, don't you?
Yeah, I do. It's an honor to do this, actually. Parent engagement and education seems to be lost in the translation. Every organization does something different. As president, what are some specific ways that you believe states can work to engage and unify parents, kids, the clubs, and coaches in soccer?
Yeah, start the conversation a little sooner. This is actually where the Federation can do a lot from that entry point. I think we all would agree that parents are becoming a problem. I am a parent. I've got 6 kids. I've been through this a few times. I've seen the worst of people, and I've seen the best of people. But I do believe that the Federation has an opportunity here. It might even be a source of revenue. And that is to start that connection right at the beginning. If you're going to be the source of anything, be the go-to, be the guide, the guidelines to help our parents understand what their function is from the beginning, and drive people to that information source that allows these parents to understand how detrimental they can be to their children's lives when they get this wrong. We, as a federation, kind of wait until they turn 13, flash the badge, and say, you want to be ready to spend some real money? That can't be the way we do things. And we all know that the money grab and the way that the people are perceiving this space right here, as far as the club space, is not fair. A couple of things. We got serious too soon, in my opinion. I think that we've taken a lot of the enjoyment out of that entry stage. We can do that through a platform, through the federation, where we connect with our parents. Connect with these kids. Don't turn this into an extension of school. I think we'd all agree in that regard that our kids just want to have fun. I heard Kyle talk about Mia Hamm. Mia's right. Mia's always right, by the way. But I think it's more of an opportunity for the federation to really engage with the real foundation. Our numbers are going down. We all know that. It's worse than you think, actually. And that's because we haven't been a voice or even a leader in that regard. We can do a better job with the foundation. We got to do another one, right? That could be a really good. Let's take that one. That looks like a long one. Sorry,
it's your clock.
It's really long.
It's your clock.
How am I doing on the clock?
As president of U.S. Soccer, how would you address the aggregate 23.5% decline in 6 to 12-year-old overall soccer participation that has been documented by various research?
Look, I think, again, taking the joy out of it, I think this is what we just talked about actually covers it. So, want to do another one?
Go.
Okay.
Yep, a minute 38.
I know, we're working on it.
We're
good with the clock. Remember, we used to do this.
It's the clock. It's
Usually
fine.
you got to take us to break, though.
You're in television. You should know this. And I should be able to open this. Here we go. There are huge sections of the country that do not have access to a youth soccer ODP or youth soccer developmental academy. What is your plan for establishing programs in these underserved parts of the country?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I think I already talked about that as well. I mean, I think when you start to realize how completely connected everything is, when the 1% doesn't cooperate, the 99% suffers. And and in my opinion, I've looked at this in a way that the best way to cast that net further out is to provide opportunity. This is the United States, by the way. I know that nobody wants. I've said other things in the past, but we cannot look at this as an elitist system. And I said it yesterday, I'll say it again. You will never create an elite player from an elitist system. It's just not going to happen. It's not. And I believe that when we provide that light at the end of the tunnel to a certain extent for some of these smaller towns. I mean, look, we just lost Columbus. Columbus is going to possibly move. But why isn't Dayton, why isn't Cincinnati or Cleveland given a real opportunity within? That's how we do this. There's so many great cities across the country that we worry about, and we make them think that they have to spend $150 million just so that they can be a part of the big show, when the big show is all of us. We can do this together. It's not about the small. Boom, I got it. See that? Right at the...
You nailed it.
Yeah.
Television guy. Final statement from you.
I just want us to understand the magnitude of this decision that's in front of you. I want you to understand that I'm frustrated too. This country can be and should be realizing its immense potential. And if we don't comply, you want to think about something else, which is, I'm not trying to scare you, but FIFA doesn't appreciate us right now. And if we don't comply and we don't get on the schedule and we don't get with the plan, we might be looking at a situation where 2026 might not happen. Stop asking ourselves why or how we're going to get 2026. We need to start asking why we didn't get 2022. When we change things through structure, through cooperation, through leadership, we're going to be able to finally be the country we were always supposed to be. We're going to find our space within the global game, and when we get our act together, we will eventually dominate. And we're going to love it the whole way. I'll make you love it again. How's that? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Nailed it.
Huh?
You nailed the clock.
Did I get that one too?
Good stuff.
All right.
There was no clock there.
No, I know, but I got the clock.
Thank you, Eric. Candidate number 7, please welcome Paul Caligiuri.
In the USA, I realized a dream. This is JP Dellacamera.
Right. Shot heard
This guy
around the
made
world.
me famous. Let's give it up for JP. Thank you.
Paul made me famous. It was Paul's goal. I just called it. You get to make the opening statement.
Well, wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for being here in Philadelphia. Obviously, I'm very grateful to be part of this wonderful event and speak upon some wonderful members of all of soccer in all the communities throughout the United States. If there's 2 things that I could leave you with in this short conversation we're going to have, is that to remember that United States is the best country in the world. In the United States, we're blessed to have the best men and women athletes in the world. And I believe that here in the United States, I am the best suitable for the President of the United States because I'm committed to you in all of soccer to provide the best programs from the grassroots all the way through our men's and women's professional teams and into our men's and women's national teams. I believe my experience, not just on the playing field, but the 15 years after my career of what I've spent serving the board of directors of the United States Soccer Federation, being an athletes council member, starting the United States Men's National Team Players Association. I was an Olympic developmental coach, and I was a developmental academy coach for one of our pro teams. I currently do coach in the semi-pro ranks in the adult sector, and I oversee a club. And hopefully, as president of the United States Soccer Federation, I would not have to give that up, because I don't look at it as a job. But in the last 15 years of going through this journey, I realized very clearly the millions and millions of hours, the thousands and thousands of volunteers that allowed athletes and myself to realize and live our dream. Because I soon found myself doing the same thing that U.S. Youth Soccer and the other youth organizations have done countlessly for the last 40, maybe 50 years. The one thing I hope someone out there invents is a mechanism of how to put on nets, because that's one thing I didn't like to do. But I was out there. I was out there either coaching, putting up nets, helping kids play soccer, have access to the game, and of course, live their dreams, be it at the recreational level, be it for a competitive side, the college level, and of course, reaching the pros and their dreams playing in the World Cup. Thank you very much.
First question, Paul. It's been the goal of U.S. Youth Soccer and our member state associations to align more closely with the Federation. What are your plans to utilize states so that they become of great value to U.S. Soccer? And in what areas do you see increased involvement between U.S. Youth Soccer, the state associations, and the Federation?
Well, it's a relatively easy fix. It's just a matter of we need to communicate with each other. And I went around the country, and obviously I spoke to some of my friends, and there's others I'd love to speak to in the coming weeks as we head into the election that I haven't been able to reach out because of the complexities of things. But the simple fix is very simple. We need to communicate, and some of these people have told me that they have spoken to candidates or potential U.S. Soccer Federation members more in the last few weeks than they have done in their entire lifetime. And some of these people here in the crowd, and you know who you are, have been around the game for 30 years. We need to align all our efforts. What I stand for is we don't need to necessarily take one over the other and make one a loser or a winner. We just need to align all our efforts together, leave no stone unturned, find the best players through identification, develop the best players, and provide the best coaching. It's a simple fix if we align ourselves together and continue the efforts that we've started from the grassroots level all the way to our national team process.
Second question, Paul. The youth soccer landscape in the U.S. is fractured with so many different groups. Growing the game is essential to our future success. So as the next president of U.S. Soccer, what would be your plan to address the youth system and create greater alignment between the Federation and its members to grow the game from the grassroots level to the highest level?
Yeah, we don't need to divide. We need to be inclusive. And we can look at every facet of the game, even in youth soccer. I'm from Southern California, so Cal South is my state association that I grew up and I went through all the way through the ODP program and lived out my dream. But when I look at that from a lens, I see that there's, number one, there's recreational soccer, and they have certain needs. The second area, you just look at competitive soccer. And of course, you look at the on to college and what do we do at those stages. But most importantly that I look at in all those lenses is in the multicultural sector, an area that we've been talking about for decades. And it hasn't fallen on based on effort. The passion, the effort has been there. There's been a lot of great work, but we truly need a visionary that now could propel us to a different level. My plan has, one of the plans I'd like to see is that we tap into the multicultural sector with a simple process. It's to make all high school varsity coaches Olympic Developmental Program scouts, ODP scouts. They are our access into the communities that they serve. Being a high school coach, you don't make a lot of money. You serve your community, and they definitely know and they have access to unregistered players and talent that we were missing. It's a simple solution, but under an Olympic Developmental Program process, we could get into those communities.
Third question, what is your overall opinion as to the effectiveness of the Development Academy, and what alternatives, changes, or additions would you propose for your vision of the player pathway in the U.S.?
I think we first need to look and applaud in the areas where the Developmental Academy has been successful. They clearly got us onto a path where we're starting to look at more training, less games. They're focused on the elite players. Perhaps it's got a little bit saturated with the growth in most recent times, but the ideology of serving the boys sector to get them up to the pro level and into the national team, the statistics show positive results. But particularly, we're leaving out a huge community through that process. All studies show that it is increased the cost. It hasn't lessened the cost, it's increased it. And that has not provided access to millions of kids that don't play the game. But we can't just focus on the target of the DA being the problem. We need to put our efforts to find out ways we need to get into these multicultural Hispanic communities to raise the bar, raise the level of the game, so we provide a better product for everybody and leave no one out of our system, provide access, provide equality, provide better training, better coaching, and through the Olympic developmental process, I think we could do that.
All right, you get to fish. You got your 3 questions. I'll mix these up a little bit better and let you pick. No peeking.
Do I read it or you?
I'll read it. Taking away my job now?
No, definitely not.
Please provide your vision for the role of the highest elected official in U.S. soccer. I'm going to break this up. This is one question, but it would be better this way. Please provide your vision for the role of the highest elected official in U.S. soccer.
The role of the president needs to walk the talk, to be the leader and the voice and the face of what we all stand for, the American values and ethics that we live by. And certainly in all the initiatives, you have to lead the board of directors in a vision. Certainly I'm a visionary. I'm not a functionary. And I believe that we're in a changing time, a time where it's bringing us all together to talk about the game. I've seen that in our history. There's been pivotal times of qualifying for the World Cup, but really hosting the World Cup in '94. The success of the women in the years to come has kept this momentum going. The greatness of Major League Soccer that's led us to exciting fans and built our pillars on the game now. We are now in a turning point of who our next leader will be, who will be a visionary to propel us to the next level. And I think that's what we all want, is to have someone that has a clear-cut vision that could align people together, communicate with them, and work with the current board of directors that we have in U.S. Soccer Federation.
Okay, this is still question 4, but it's really like a 3-parter, so I'm breaking it up.
You said 2. Now you added one.
It's 3.
All right.
What should the role of U.S. Soccer's board of directors be? The board of directors.
The role of the board of directors is to lead this nation. Obviously, you have different councils that represent different groups, the adult council, the athletes council, and the amateur or the youth council. Primarily, those 3 prongs are what we see in soccer, the landscape in America. The role is very important. I believe that we need to go through a comprehensive review of the bylaws and trading. As I went on this journey, I had to read 3 sets of bylaws: the FIFA bylaws, the U.S. Soccer Federation bylaws, and the U.S. Olympic Committee bylaws. And I think that is important as we realize that we may find things we can improve upon, and we may find things that we are not doing quite well. So the board of the directors has an important role to serve all the members in the United States Soccer Federation community.
What about the Federation staff, their role?
Staff is huge. I mean, I think that falls in lines with the CEO. Currently, Dan Flynn has done a phenomenal job. He's been there 16 years. I understand he's committed for another year. His contract could extend. I've had a wonderful conversation in my time with the CEO was Hank Steinbrecher, who actually hired Dan Flynn during his period. And both of them, regardless of whether a new CEO comes in sooner than Dan Flynn's time up, they have agreed to do succession planning. Succession planning and onboarding is very important in massive corporations because we don't want to lose any momentum we built. And certainly those 2 men have a lot of wealth of knowledge that we could tap into that could help prepare the next CEO to lead this nation and provide a quality staff that we need.
You get to pick one more.
Thank you.
I'm going to let you read that one. The hardest part is opening these. How do you plan to increase diversity among U.S. Soccer staff, the committees, and the board?
That's a great question, and I appreciate that. I've reached out to the first vice president of American Association for Access, Equality, and Diversity, and she's committed to coming on board as part of my team, or at least advisory team. And this is a person, we understand there's only one other person above her in terms of this topic in the entire United States, worked for our government and has been hired by massive corporations to go in there to make sure they're compliant with laws. Every major corporation in the United States has governmental contracts. She's hired by those corporations, be it the Yahoos of the world or other massive telecom companies, energy companies, and helps their staff become more compliant, helps their leaders understand what is important. And I think we need to have someone with more knowledge, more experience that could help steer us not only at the national level, but we could look at to governance and diversity at the state level. Those are important areas, and I think we need to build those resources and provide that guidance from United States Soccer Federation, not only at the staff there, but to the entire members.
Okay, you handled your 5 questions. Now you get to make the closing comment.
Well, I want to talk forever. I mean, I enjoy talking soccer, obviously, and it's not something I want to, close right now. But certainly, I know that in my heart that there's been many things that have done quite well. In the first thing I want to recognize Sunil Gulati, who's done a marvelous job at leading this country for the years he spent as United States Soccer Federation president. So Sunil, thank you. You're over there. We are in changing times, and it is important that we make a decision. I want anyone and everyone out there that would like to contact me to please contact me. And I'm going to reach out to every delegate as I have the delegate list to reach out to you to understand needs further. I know there's importance. I have a lot of relationships with a lot of people in a variety of states and a lot of areas. I believe in one thing. America is the greatest country in the world. We have the most resources than anyone else in the world. We need to find those resources and utilize them to the best of our abilities. As I have many friends internationally, and they say, America, United States, you have everything. There's a couple good things going on right now. Europeans are dying to come into Major League Soccer. That's a positive sign. There's people that want to come work here. The influence of international influence of not only coaches, but other demonstrators and exhibitors from different parts of the world are here at United Soccer Coaches event. We are leaders. This group that is assembled here in Philadelphia is leading the way in many regards. We have the #1 referee group in the world. but we constantly, as Americans, look for ways to improve, to get better, to find those ways we could serve those members better. Largest Coaches Association. Lynn, awesome. Great stuff. Resource. It is my commitment as United States Soccer Federation president to commit to every level of the game, from the grassroots level, through the youth, up through the college system, to the pro ranks, and into the national team programs, to offer the best programs we could offer, provide access, affordability, and obviously fun. Because the one thing that brings us all together is the passion that we live with the beautiful game. And I appreciate dearly what everyone has contributed to this game, and please continue your work as we move forward. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Paul. You get a free bottle of water to
JP,
go.
good job.
Pleasure. Thank you. Down to the final candidate. This has gone by, I think, fairly quickly. Number 8, let me introduce Carlos Cordero. Carlos. How are you?
JP, how are you?
Good. How are you? You get to make an opening statement, seated, standing, or whatever you like.
Thank you. Well, thank you, JP, and thank you, USYS, for hosting this forum. I'm delighted to be here with all of you today. Thank you for all the passion you bring to our sport. I know many of you are volunteers, and that's something that's important to me as well. Let me start with a little bit about myself. I came to America as an immigrant. With my mother and my 3 siblings, I finished high school in Miami. With scholarships and work study, I got myself through college. I've had a long career in international business, and I'm now retired. About 10 years ago, I was invited by the Federation to become your first independent director. Unusual for an independent director, I volunteered to take on a lot more responsibility. I chaired the budget committee. I've been your treasurer. I've served on various roles, or various, I'd say, roles in, at the foundation, at CONCACAF, and now at FIFA. And I'm grateful for the opportunity you gave me 2 years ago to serve as vice president. I've worked hard to improve governance at the board. I think we are more transparent than ever before. And I'm proud of what we have achieved. But as we all know, U.S. soccer needs to change. And that is why I made the decision to run and to challenge the status quo. But look, this is not about blowing up soccer, U.S. soccer. This is not about breaking it up. This is about building it up. This is about working together and aiming higher. Today, I want to focus on 3 themes before we get to the Q&A. First, experience. Second, fairness. And third, integrity. U.S. soccer is a very complex organization. I think we need a leader with credible experience, familiarity with the workings and the operating of the Federation, and a deep, deep understanding of the USOC, of CONCACAF, and FIFA. I believe I am the only candidate with the experience to hit the ground running on day 1. Second, fairness. I believe competition is good, but competition has to be fair. And where the playing fields aren't leveled, I think we need to enforce the rules so that everyone plays at the same level. We also need to make soccer affordable, or more affordable. I have proposed, or I will propose, that the Federation create an investment fund, or a fund, from or an annual fund with 100% of the fees that you pay us, that we put these funds to work to basically grow soccer through your communities. Finally, on integrity. I believe the next president should be independent, beholden to no one, and with no conflicts of interest. Everyone who knows me well knows that I'm fiercely independent. I will work tirelessly to bring people together around common goals. I believe I'm fair. I'll serve with integrity. And once again, I think I'm the only candidate with the independence, the experience to hit the ground running, and I will deliver the change we need. Can I close with a promise that I will listen to all of you? USYS will have a seat at the table. and that every decision that affects you will be made with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. First question for you. It's been the goal of U.S. youth soccer and our member state associations to align more closely with the Federation. What are your plans to utilize states so that they can become of great value to U.S. soccer? And in what areas do you see increased involvement between U.S. youth soccer, the state associations, and the Federation?
JP, look, youth soccer is the foundation and future of soccer in America. We call it our lifeblood. And I have great respect for the complexities of running state organizations such as you all represent, and the tremendous amount of resources that you invest every single day. I applaud the changes that were taken in Frisco last year in July. I think that for the first time we can actually work together. The first time we're aligned from top to bottom. With me, you will have a real voice. You will have a seat at the table. I've proposed creating a membership department at Soccer House so that those folks, together with you all, will talk about things, and that every decision that's taken that involves youth soccer is made with you. I think the Federation ultimately needs to be complementary, not competition to our states. Whilst on the subject of governance, if I may go back to something I've been reading recently, I don't believe we need an outside commission that excludes the Federation and excludes our membership to tell us how to run U.S. soccer. You all are not part of the problem. You all are the solution.
Second question, the youth soccer landscape in the USA is fractured with all of the different groups, growing the game being essential to our future success. So as the next president of U.S. soccer, what would be your plan to address the youth system and create greater alignment between the Federation and its members to grow the game from the grassroots up to the highest level?
So JP, growing youth soccer, promoting a more unified landscape, making things more affordable, these need to be our highest priorities. And if you look at my platform, and that's what I talk about, I'd make youth soccer the single biggest priority for myself over the next 4 years. Now look, in an ideal world, we'd have a single unified platform, much like other countries do. The reality is that's not going to happen. So we have to accept the fact that we'll always have multiple youth programs. But there needs to be a level playing field. I've talked about this already. There needs to be a level playing field where basically the rules are enforced. And I think competition can be good when it's fair. But let's think beyond that. I think instead of fighting with each other, we should be thinking about the millions of kids who are playing soccer in unaffiliated programs outside of U.S. soccer. These are largely from underserved communities, the immigrant populations that we have. Those are the kids that we should be targeting. So my priority will be to grow the programs rather than worry about as much, or we shouldn't be worried as much about the kids we have. We should be looking at a membership of closer to 7 or 8 million kids, not the 3.5 or 4 that we've had for the last 10 years. So I propose in this fund that we would dedicate 100% of your membership fees to growing programs in your local communities. Now, I recognize that's a relatively small amount of money, but this will be an annual fund, so 3 plus 4 plus 3, these numbers add up over time. But this is just the beginning. And I'd like to see us working together on a grander plan to bring in more resources.
Third question, Carlos, what is your overall opinion on the effectiveness of the Development Academy, and what alternatives, changes, or additions would you propose?
Look, I think we're in our 10th or 11th year of a journey. And now that we're in that we have enough data out there, I think it's time to conduct a thorough review of our development academies. And in fact, that is what's happening as we speak. We have a formal audit that is underway. I think we should be proud of some of the successes we've achieved, the fact that players can now play at a substantially higher level. But I think we also need to have the courage to correct our shortcomings. And player development is not, I think, a single lane road. It should be an integrated system of multiple pathways, including ODP and many of our regional and national leagues. But we need to do this together. We need to significantly invest significant resources in all of these pathways. We need to think about where ODP is today and how can we revamp that program to make it more competitive. All of that will need more resources. I've talked about the fund, but that's just the very beginning. And look, if I had a wish and a legacy in 4 years' time or 8 years' time, I would love to see ODP free for all. I think we have to accept the fact that not everyone can end up in an academy. States are different, geographies are different, and so we have to accept that there will be multiple pathways.
Okay. You get to pick out of the bowl. Bonus question for you.
All right.
Yeah. So this is your fourth one. There are huge sections of the country that don't have access to ODP or U.S. Soccer Development Academy. So what's your plan to establish these programs, something more specific? You were talking about it before, but in these underserved parts of the country.
So look, U.S. Soccer now spends roughly $50 million on player development. What is that? That's everything from coaching coaches to scouting systems, what we call a talent ID, high performance programs, and the like. All our youth national activities, all of that constitutes about $50 million. My view is that we are considerably underfunded when you look at the grand picture and the opportunity that we have in front of us. Look at our friends in Germany or in England. I mean, England runs a budget now that's close to $500 million annual. Germany is above that. So they are putting to work in the grassroots significantly more resources, and that's where we're at. We are not as wealthy as we think we are. Our reserves of $150 million over the next 3 or 4 years will be largely depleted to about 50-odd million, just based on the existing programming we have. So when we talk about expanding ODP at the end of the day, and that's where I'd like to be, we need more resources. So I'd like to see us grow the budget commensurate with the opportunity, but that means growing into $300–400 million a year, and I think that's achievable. We are 2 years away from sitting down with our marketing partners to talk about, a new set of contracts, and I think that will generate significantly more resources, which I would suggest will go back into the grassroots.
You get to pick one more.
Okay.
Thank you. What is your position regarding the current coaching education structure?
So as I'm sure this question is related to some of the new initiatives that we're bringing out from Soccer House. This is an example, and we can agree to disagree, but this is an example of an initiative or a policy that obviously comes out of Soccer House in Chicago. We have a group of people there who have been with us for the last couple of years, and I would say that I think if there's a concern, this is a policy initiative that perhaps should have been discussed and vetted and shared with many others or many of you before the decisions were taken. I think the criticism was more on the execution and the implementation of those programs and less the actual substance of them. But at the end of the day, we are radically short coaches. We're trying to build it up to the point where we can increase our coaches by 300,000 or 400,000. But the reality is, when you look at the cost of coaching or getting a coaching license today in America, an A license compared to, say, one in Germany, it's 6 to 7 times more expensive. And so what we're trying to do is come up with a system where we can centralize the licensing, make it more affordable using a digital platform, but by doing that, you're losing some of the human touch. And so I think we have to figure out a way going forward where we can keep both the human and the mechanical, so to speak, keep both of them, but that's going to require significantly more resources. And we're spending $4,000 or $5,000 an A license here, and Germany's at $600 or $700. No wonder they have as many A licenses in Germany as we have F here. So it's a problem we're trying to correct.
Well, the one good thing about finishing last, you get the final word. You get to close the show. So just a final comment from you that would pretty much end our forum today.
Well, you've all been here 2.5 hours now, I think. But
who's counting? Yeah, it is, actually.
Look, I would just say thank you to USYS for hosting this. This has been a terrific opportunity. I would never have imagined that the election would have taken this this shape and form. But look, I think it's good that we have an open discussion. I respect all our candidates. Again, I appreciate the time. I've made the point that I think I'm, the most experienced, and I'm ready to hit the ground running. I very much look for your support and be honored if I would have your support next month. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carlos.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Great to see you in person.
Yeah, you too. I've never met you.
Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'd like to thank all of the candidates who participated in today's forum. We heard from all 8. Would like to thank those who watched as we stream this on U.S. Youth Soccer's Facebook page and U.S. Youth Soccer's YouTube channel. Thanks to U.S. Youth Soccer for putting this on so that everybody could have a chance to hear all of the candidates at least one last time and meet them in person. And thanks to all of you in the room for attending. Enjoyed it. Thank you.
Hello. For U.S. Youth Soccer State Association presidents and executive directors, we're going to meet downstairs just one level down. Okay? Thank you for attending.